Hey. Time for another out-of-this-world story from rSpace. Some people hid their mess behind a mask of righteousness, smiling in Sunday clothes while stepping all over everyone else's life. Today on rSpace, a holier-than-thou facade gets torn to shreds by someone who's done playing nice. My wife called me infertile, cheated while trying for a baby. I went absolutely ballistic on her in the aftermath. I know it sounds corny, but I don't think that I have genuinely hated someone in my life. Maybe as a kid, I thought I hated someone or another, but in my adult life, I haven't had any reason to feel that strongly about someone. Until my soon-to-be ex-wife. Because she has absolutely broken my heart, and all the love that I had for her has disappeared and turned into pure resentment. This might sound dramatic, but by the time I talk about what she did to me, you'll understand why I feel the way I do. This is bound to be a bit long because there's a lot for me to cover for the story to make sense. I, 33 male, met my wife, 32 female, Elizabeth, 10 years ago. We were young and stupid back then, so things were on and off. But eventually, we settled into a rhythm, and we ended up dating for a bit before we got married. We've been married for almost 8 years now. We always wanted to have children, but for the early years of our marriage, things were all over the place in our lives. We moved cities twice, and we were trying to stabilize our finances by going all in on our careers. Fortunately for us, things have worked out somewhat well, and we were able to get to a point where we decided that it was a good time for us to try for children. We tried for about 7 months with no success. When I say that we were going at it like rabbits, I'm not exaggerating. We'd focus mostly on her ovulation, as expected, but despite how hard we were trying, nothing seemed to be happening. I was a little dismayed by that, but I was ready to just keep going. Unfortunately, it wasn't the same for her. She seemed to be really affected by the situation to a point that I found excessive. According to her, she was getting older fast, and she couldn't keep waiting around if she wanted to be a mother of 2 children. I could understand the pressure, but she was putting too much of it on herself, and it wasn't healthy. I supported her though, because I know that as a woman, especially one who was raised somewhat traditionally, the pressure on her was a lot different than anything that I could understand. To try and make things better, since it had been 7 months of trying, I told her that it would be a good idea if we both went to see doctors so we could see if there was an issue with her fertility. I went, and the doctor said that there wasn't much of an issue that he could see with my swimmers. According to him, I shouldn't have any problem getting my little guys to the right spot. He advised that my wife see someone, and I already let him know that was going to be done. When she did all of her tests, the doctor also concluded that there wasn't anything obvious to make us feel like we were dealing with infertility. The doctor said that we should hit the 1-year mark of trying before we concluded anything serious, but that there was always interventions for us to try out if we got to that point and things still didn't work. So I felt like we were going to keep trying since there wasn't much time left for us to keep giving it a shot. I was open to any medical intervention that could help us as long as my wife was open to it too. We tried for about a month and some weeks extra, but I could tell that she was really getting agitated even though we had only seen 2 periods since the time we went to the doctor. Things changed when the 3rd period was meant to come around and it didn't show up at all. We've had situations like that before where it eventually came around. So I wasn't trying to get too excited, but she seemed to have a lot of faith in the missed period this time around, and when she tried to test and got a positive, it took everything in me not to attempt a backflip. Honestly, I don't think I've been that happy in a long time, because we had been struggling for a win, and that was the win that we had finally gotten. Looking back at how happy I was, I'm hurt even more by the whole thing, and I know that whatever revenge I choose to have, I deserve it. No one will be able to convince me that I'm in the wrong. So, I went along with the pregnancy, and when we got to the 3-month mark, I was even happier, because I read that can be one of the easiest periods for a pregnancy to be lost. We made it through that period though, and I remember how I started to daydream about being a father. It felt really good. The way the whole thing fell apart was pure luck on my part. I was updating my phone to a new version of software and I wanted to do some quick calculations, so I grabbed Elizabeth's phone and started using the calculator. She didn't object because we were open with each other's phones. There was meant to be nothing for us to hide from one another. I was doing the calculations for about 2 minutes before a notification popped in that said, "How's my baby doing?" The first thing that came into my mind was that the person saying that was referring to Elizabeth as their baby. Obviously that grabbed my attention and I opened the chat. She was only half sitting up in bed and I was sitting up fully, so she couldn't see what I was doing to her on her phone. That was when I figured out exactly what had been going on in my marriage. The person asking was referring to her pregnancy as their baby because they had asked that question over the last month at various times. And each time, she'd refer to the baby in third person. Once, she said she couldn't wait to find out if it was a he or a she. I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt because I've been around some cultures where my baby could be used as an endearing way to refer to what is obviously not their baby. However, all it took was me scrolling up just a little bit for me to see what the truth was. I went back by about 4 months, which didn't take much scrolling since it seemed my wife and this person, D, barely conversed over text. That was when I saw her reach out to the person out of the blue, referring to them as Daniel at just one point back then. It started with small talk, but then she told Daniel that she wanted to ask him for a favor. I know this is really off, but my husband is infertile, and honestly, I'm sick and tired of trying and trying. I need to try someone else, and I need discretion, please. She didn't say anything more than that because it was clear that Daniel was smart enough to read between the lines. He said he'd call her instead, and then he did. So I have no idea what was actually said, but based on everything that followed after, he had said yes, they had slept together, and the child that was in her was very likely not mine, because it was only after an arrangement with him that a pregnancy finally happened. It's hard for me to describe how it felt for me to read all of that right beside her while she was watching Netflix. I just felt so much negativity directed at her. My head was a mess, but I just knew that she was making me feel so many horrible emotions. Before I handed her phone back to her, I took screenshots, sent them to myself, and deleted the evidence from her phone and our messages. I gave the phone back and just walked out of bed to go and sit in the living room and think. I had no idea what the next line of action was meant to be for me under such circumstances. I was so confused and hurt. Was I meant to confront her right away? Was I meant to file for divorce first? She had a baby and I didn't even know if it was mine, though the chances were low that it was. I decided that I was going to serve her with papers first, and then I'd have the inevitable confrontation at that point. Because even if the baby were mine, it was clear that she had still cheated on me in an attempt to have a baby, and that was a crime enough for a divorce. There was no way that I was misunderstanding the situation. I met up with a divorce lawyer that week and talked the entire situation through with him. He said that it was best for me to get the divorce rolling first before I confronted her, so I followed that advice. Once the papers were ready, I knew that I was going to serve her with them at the house, but I was so anxious about the confrontation because I knew that my life was about to change forever, and at the age of 33, you can't blame me if I felt like things were going the way I finally wanted them to, and that was about to fall apart. I walked into the apartment that day and dropped the envelope in front of her. She had no idea what was inside when she opened it, but when she saw it, she screamed and looked at me while covering her mouth. She was waiting for an explanation, but I didn't give it to her, so she asked me why. I told her that she knew why. I was meant to be the one asking her the question. I told her that the baby in her was very likely not mine, and she knew that. She chose to sleep with someone else because she craved a baby that badly. I had found out, and I didn't want anything to do with her any longer. She started crying, saying that the baby was mine, and it didn't belong to the other guy. I asked her how she knew that for sure, and then I remembered what she had said, and I asked why she'd even think it was mine if I was infertile, as she had said that. She just responded to that with more crying. I told her that it was in her best interest to just sign the papers so that we could get things over with. If I found out that the child was mine, then we'd figure out how to co-parent. But she had cheated on me, and there was zero reason for me to be around her any longer. She said that I didn't understand why she had done what she did. I told her that I did understand, and I didn't care, because she didn't have to do it. We could have kept trying. We could have given IVF a shot, maybe even a surrogate. But no, she chose to let someone else impregnate her. It took her ages to sign the papers, but she eventually did, and we've started the divorce process now. During the time it took her to sign, I hired a PI to follow her, and I was able to find out the address, full name, and occupation of her affair partner. This man was a pastor, for full disclosure. How ironic. I also got pictures of him and her together. I'm going to figure out what to do about him, but for now, I'm focusing on the divorce that I'm in the middle of. If I'm lucky, everything will go okay, and I'll get a clean break from her. At this point, part of me is hoping that the child isn't mine, simply because I don't want to find myself tied to a woman like her. Edit. As I said earlier, I'm going to get a paternity test for the child as soon as possible. As time has gone on, I'm even less convinced that the child is mine. It is almost certainly not. And at this point, that's the result that I'm expecting. For now, I'm doing all right, and there's no risk of me doing anything stupid. I appreciate the concern from a few of you. She let you get excited about becoming a dad, let you daydream about names and futures, all while knowing that there was a real chance the baby wasn't yours. That's brutal. And the crying after she got caught? That's not regret. That's panic because the truth came out. Walking away isn't just the right move, it's the only move. She's already proven she'll torch everything in reach to get what she wants. Update. I'm back. After my post about my wife who cheated on me because she deemed that I was infertile, she got pregnant soon after sleeping with her affair partner, and needless to say, I ended up filing for divorce. I'm happy to say that my wife is now my ex-wife. A lot has happened since the last post I wrote, so I will do my absolute best to compress the entire story into this post so that it doesn't go on for too long. We weren't able to come to an agreement to settle during the divorce process, so things went to court. I ended up being frustrated there, and as expected, the court took the woman's side, even though I had more than enough to prove that she had been truly cheating on me and potentially even tried to commit paternity fraud. But nope, despite all of that, she got the house, and I have to pay her alimony. Thankfully, the child hadn't been born yet, so child support couldn't be enforced yet. However, a prenatal paternity test was ordered, giving us the chance to figure out paternity without needing to wait. I didn't even know that was a thing. It wasn't a surprise to me when it was found out that I wasn't the father. It had to have been the other guy, Daniel. It hurt really badly, because as much as I didn't want anything to do with her any longer, I was split on whether I wanted the baby at that point. When I found out the baby wasn't mine, that's when I realized how much I actually wanted it. I also started to blame myself pretty harshly, because despite the fertility testing I had done, I hadn't been able to get her pregnant, but someone else had. It hurt. I think that situation, plus the fact that the courts had favored her, just made something snap inside me. She was proven to be the cheater, but she got to come out on top because she was pregnant. I decided that I was going to ruin her life, and I knew that I was going to go all the way in that regard once the divorce was finalized. When things were over, I went to the house to go and move my things out, with a police escort, of course. She knew I wouldn't do anything to her, but when she said in a quiet tone that she was willing to take me in, as if she was doing me a favor, I wanted to hit her so bad. I'm sorry to say that if the cop hadn't been there, I might have. That just enhanced my resolve to mess her life up irreparably. I started with her affair partner. I called him on the phone and told him exactly who I was. He sounded unconcerned. He had apparently heard about the divorce, and he basically said he didn't have much sympathy for me. I told him that I felt the same way, and I'd made sure that he'd see the extent to which I had no sympathy for him. He asked if I was threatening him, but I told him that I wasn't. The next Sunday, based on the stuff I had gotten from my PI back then, I went to his church with several printed copies of his crimes with my wife. He didn't recognize me. After the service, I was the first to go outside, and I started handing out flyers to everyone exiting. I had probably handed out 50 before some guys, including him, came and tried to rough handle me and take me indoors. I managed to break free, and I threw the rest of the papers into the air for them to clean up the mess. The good thing was that enough of them had been seeing what their pastor was up to, and I haven't bothered to check in on how he's doing ever since then. He wasn't the one who I wanted to focus on, but I'm sure that after sleeping with another man's wife and getting her pregnant, he's not going to have much more time on the pulpit. After that, I moved on to Elizabeth, my ex-wife. She was the one I really wanted to hurt, and I was ready to go the distance. I started the easy way, which was to expose her to everyone that she knew. I let everyone that knew her know that she was no longer with her husband because she wanted a baby so badly that she chose to cheat on him with someone else, and likely attempt to pass the baby off as his for the rest of their lives. That was easy, but it was very effective, because before long, I got a lot of people hitting me up. A lot of them expressing their sympathy. It wasn't what I did it for, but it felt good, especially because alongside the sympathy came a lot of bad-mouthing of Elizabeth, and it made me feel great. Needless to say, she eventually reached out to me, and she was extremely mad. That sounds like an understatement, but I was glad to find out that she was feeling just a fraction of the anger I felt when I realized that she had cheated on me. She ranted for several minutes, but there was nothing for me to say to all of that. She eventually hung up in anger. I remember that her parents had called me too because they're good Christian folk. While it was obvious that they didn't want to explicitly take my side, it was clear that they knew I was pained by the entire thing. They hated how it went down, but I appreciated them enough for reaching out, even though I knew that I was likely going to have absolutely nothing to do with them in the future. That was just one aspect of my revenge plan. The next thing that I did was go for her job. And quite honestly, that part was fun for me. It was a little tough for me to find out a way to jeopardize that aspect of her life, but the fact that I still knew her passwords helped. I was able to log into her email, and with that, I got access to a lot of correspondence between her colleagues, and a few clients. I downloaded a few things which were clearly marked as confidential, but I got a strong urge to mess around when I saw her boss in the Google Workspace. I sent a message cursing him out, written like she was drunk, and I sent a few other random messages to one of the shared conversations there. I also uploaded the documents into one of those shared groups. I did all this at around 2 a.m., so most of them were sleeping, including her, and I was hoping that she wouldn't be able to prove it. Yes, she was pregnant, but no, that didn't make the likelihood of her drinking any less likely. Just to show she was sleazy, I uploaded some of the screenshots of her chats with Daniel there. She'd know it was me once she saw those, but the other people wouldn't. I guess someone called her because I didn't need to wait until morning for her to flip out at me. She called me about 2 hours later, and this time around, she wasn't just mad, but she was actually threatening to hurt me. I acted like I didn't know what she was talking about, and the fact that I had done my best to cover my digital tracks was probably help in a lot of my favor. She wanted to know where I lived at that point, but I refused to let her know even a hint of it. To be honest, I was only hanging around in the state a little longer, as I was planning to be out of there in a week. She had been the last thing on my agenda. I wanted to get one last jab in, so I called her up and I asked her how her baby daddy was doing. She was pissed that I was referring to him as that, but I let her know that there was nothing else to call him. I asked her whether she was hearing from him, but she didn't answer that. I knew that after the drama I pulled at the church, he probably chewed her out or chose to distance himself, and now she was suffering that and didn't want to admit to it. I told her that she was merely enjoying the consequences of her actions. Her job was investigating her baby daddy was potentially going to abandon her, and everyone knew about what she was up to in our marriage. I let her know that it wasn't enough and I wished that I had done more, but she would have to deal with all of that for now. She had something good and she chose to let it go. I don't know where it came from, but I started laughing because I just felt good knowing that she felt defeated. I could hear her sniffling over the phone. I told her that despite everything, I missed her though, and if she wanted, we could give it another try and stop hating each other. I really did my best to sell it. She didn't say anything and I eventually hung up. But she called hours later and said that she had been thinking about it. She was sorry and she wanted to give us another shot. I told her that we should meet where we first met. For context, where we met was a 4-hour drive away. She said okay. On the day we were meant to meet, I went to the beach 30 minutes away, and right on time, she called and asked me where I was. I told her I was looking around for her and I asked her to send a picture of exactly where she was. She did, and once I saw she was actually there, I blocked her number and turned off my phone. I know I acted very unhinged during the entire saga, but I don't regret it at all. I feel much better and I feel like I finally got my hit back on her. I'm glad that this is all over and I feel lighter for it. Let's be real. She earned every ounce of fallout. She built her new life on deceit, then had the audacity to act smug about taking you in, as if you should be grateful for the scraps of her attention. Exposing her to her friends and family and making sure her affair partner's congregation knew who their pastor really was? That wasn't baseless vindictiveness. That was accountability. You didn't make her cheat, lie, or manipulate. You just refused to let her walk away unscathed. What do you think? And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.